All right, everybody, welcome back for another deep dive into Ban.land. You guys know by now that I absolutely love this server and all the crazy stuff that went down there, and we've already done so much with it, too. Like, we've explored that wild wiki, and we've heard from anonymous players, and we even managed to decode some seriously weird chat logs. But today, we're going to be focusing on someone who I honestly think deserves way more attention. Russ, the Russian spy.
It is pretty interesting how, despite his impact on the server, Russ remains relatively unknown compared to some of those other legends, like, SupremeTech. He was definitely operating in the shadows, like a powerful force for sure. But his name just doesn't carry the same weight,
Yeah, no, totally. And it really makes you wonder why he's not as famous as those other guys. I mean, was he intentionally keeping a low profile? Or did he just get overshadowed by some of the bigger personalities? Well, that's what we're going to try to figure out today. And we're going to be using all of the sources we have to try and figure out who Russ really was, especially through the eyes of the other players who interacted with him on the server.
I think before we jump in, it's important to understand what an Anarchy server like Ban.land actually means, Essentially, it's a Minecraft server with, no rules at all, no admins constantly monitoring, no restrictions on how you play the game. It's a digital world where players are free to do pretty much anything.
Yeah, which, as you can imagine, leads to some pretty wild situations. And that's where someone like Russ comes in.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a guy who is known as both a skilled hacker and he's SupremeTech's right-hand man.
Yeah.
It's a pretty intriguing combination, if you ask me, builder and breaker, all in one.
Totally. It speaks to the multifaceted nature of a server like this, You really needed some serious technical skills to thrive there, both to create and to exploit. And it's just so fascinating how Russ was able to kind of navigate both sides of that coin. Even his usernames, the Russian spy 00000000000000000000000 Russian FFs. They just hint at this playful personality, Maybe even a little desire to stay anonymous, or perhaps he just liked messing with the system a bit.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And don't forget, he was super involved in what we call the dupe era on Ban.land, which basically, this was a period of time where players found all these crazy glitches in the game and used them to duplicate items. Russ specifically mentions figuring out and abusing the end crystal dupe with SupremeTech.
Duping is something you see on a lot of Minecraft servers, especially on Anarchy servers where there's just less oversight, but it can have a huge impact on the game. Like, the whole economy gets messed up and the power dynamics totally shift. Imagine being able to just duplicate these super valuable resources, like end crystals. Suddenly, you've got this massive advantage over everyone else.
Right. So that brings us to a really important question. What were their motivations? Were they just power hungry, greedy for resources, or were they just thrill seekers, pushing the limits of the game? I mean, don't forget, on an Anarchy server, the idea of cheating is kind of blurry.
It's a world that, redefines those boundaries, And while it might be tempting to label someone like Russ as a villain just because he was duping, I think it's a lot more complex than that. He was definitely strategic about it, too. He even admits to using the duped end crystals to clear out the entire spawn area so that everyone would be forced to spawn at the 0-0 coordinates. That's a seriously bold move, intentionally shaping the environment for every single other player.
Okay, so let's talk about Russ's relationship with SupremeTech. He claims to have been SupremeTech's only teammate. They shared a base and even cuddled to skip nights.
Now, that's where things get interesting. Was that cuddling literal? Or was it just some weird Ban.land inside joke? I guess we may never know for sure. But it does say something about the nature of online relationships, You form these bonds through these shared experiences, a sense of camaraderie that goes beyond the digital world. It makes you wonder, was it genuine affection, a purely strategic partnership? Maybe a little bit both.
And remember, after SupremeTech left the server, Russ got close with AlphaCheater, who a lot of people see as the server's main antagonist. That's a pretty significant shift in allegiance, don't you think? It shows just how fluid the power dynamics were on Ban.land.
Oh, absolutely. It wasn't like some static hierarchy. It was more like shifting alliances in this constantly evolving ecosystem. You had to adapt, seize opportunities, and sometimes those opportunities came from some pretty unexpected partnerships.
Okay, now, this next part is seriously wild. Remember the WID Genie event? Why the server admin would occasionally introduce these totally bizarre challenges for the players to try and complete. Well, it turns out Russ was the only Sci-Li player to actually finish the WID Genie event challenges.
It's so fascinating to me how WID, who for the most part took a very hands-off approach, would sometimes inject these moments of whimsy. I mean, a genie granting wishes in Minecraft, it's so out there.
Yeah.
But it just adds to the whole unique vibe of Ban.land.
I know, right.
Yeah.
And what's even crazier is what Russ wished for. He used his wishes to get some seriously powerful tools,
Yeah.
and he made sure that no one else would ever be able to get that same level of power ever again.
We don't talk about a power move. That right there shows a strategic mind at work. But it also raises some interesting questions. Was he driven purely by power? Did he see himself as some kind of protector of the server, making sure that no one else could get too strong? Or was he just messing with everyone, playing the long game?
It's tough to say. He was definitely a complicated character, but before we get too deep into analyzing his motivations, I think we should take a look at some of his other actions on the server. After all, he wasn't just about power grabs and duping. He had a creative side, too.
You're right, and that's what makes Russ so interesting. He was full of contradictions. He could be totally ruthless and strategic, but also super playful and creative. It's like he was embodying the very spirit of Ban.land itself, you know?
Okay, so we've talked about Russ's technical skills and his relationship with SupremeTech and, of course, his involvement in the dupe era. But let's not forget about his more creative side. I mean, this is a guy who founded the Capri Sun Gang with the crazy goal of turning the nether spawn into an aquarium.
The nether, for anyone who's not familiar, it's basically this super dangerous, hellish dimension in Minecraft, turning its spawn point, the first place you arrive, into an aquarium. I mean, such a weird combination. But somehow, it kind of captures that whole Ban.land essence, you know?
Yeah.
Finding these creative ways to flip everything on its head, even in the most chaotic environments.
Totally does. And it wasn't just random chaos either. There was definitely some strategy to it, building hidden bases, making the nether spawn into something totally unexpected. It all makes you a lot harder to track and predict.
Exactly. It's about creating this sense of mystery and unpredictability. And I think it fits with Russ's whole persona, when you say. He always played the game on his own terms, whether it was through duping or forming alliances or expressing his creativity in these really strange ways.
Yeah. And he also seemed to have this bit of a collector's mindset. Remember when he tried to kill Mihaith and DayUX for those specific books they had? It kind of suggests that he wanted to have these unique items, things that no one else had.
That makes total sense in the context of Ban.land. It's a server where power and status were always changing. Possessing those rare or powerful items was a way to, like, solidify your position, you know, to set yourself apart from everyone else.
Totally. And let's not forget about his map art. Daddy Joseph, Daddy Putin, Daddy Nick, plastered across the landscape.
Yeah.
What do you make of that? Was it a joke, a statement, a glimpse into his real-world views?
It's hard to say for sure, but it definitely brings up this interesting question. How much of our real selves do we bring into these online worlds? Are they just like silly usernames and random creations, or are they like real expressions of our identities, our beliefs, maybe even our anxieties?
It's like that saying on the internet, no one knows you're a dog. But maybe on Ban.land, it was the opposite. Maybe it was a place where you could be more yourself, or at least explore these different sides of your personality, without all the constraints of real-world social norms.
That's a really fascinating thought, and it really makes you wonder, what was Russ really like when he wasn't on the server? Was he some kind of mastermind, strategically planning out every single move? Was he just a really skilled opportunist, seizing every chance he could get to improve his position? Or was he just someone who enjoyed the ride, embracing the chaos and expressing himself in these totally unique ways?
Those are all definitely possibilities.
But that's also what makes trying to analyze someone like Russ so interesting, you know? We have to piece together his personality and his motivations from these scattered bits of information and the things that other people have said about him.
It's like we're these digital archaeologists digging through the ruins of Ban.land, trying to reconstruct the mindset of one of its most mysterious players.
And even though we might never get all the answers, just the process of exploring those questions and debating these different interpretations, that's what makes deep dives like this so rewarding.
Absolutely. It's a great reminder that even in these digital worlds, human behavior can be incredibly complex, full of contradictions and hidden agendas, and sometimes the most captivating stories are the ones that leave us with more questions than answers.
Speaking of unanswered questions, though, we can't forget about the guy behind the curtain, the architect of this whole chaotic experiment, Wid, the server admin. What was his vision for all of this? What were his motivations? Was he this benevolent overseer or some kind of mischievous puppet master?
That's definitely a deep dive for another day, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. We could spend hours trying to unravel the enigma that is Wid.
But for now, I think we should focus on what we've learned about Russ. He was a talented hacker, a trusted friend of SupremeTech, a master of duping, and surprisingly, a creative force. He definitely left his mark on Ban.land in a ton of ways, even if many of his motivations are still a mystery.
And that mystery, I think, is a big part of his appeal.
Yeah.
He represents that whole unpredictable nature of Ban.land itself, a digital world where anything could happen, where players could completely reinvent themselves, form these unlikely alliances, and leave their mark on a server that broke all the rules.
He was a true product of Ban.land, both shaping it and being shaped by its one-of-a-kind environment. And even though the server itself is gone, the stories of players like Russ continue to fascinate us, and they challenge us to rethink our ideas about these online communities, the nature of anarchy, and the really complex ways that humans behave in digital spaces. So we've spent all the time trying to unpack Russ's actions and his motivations. But I think we need to address the elephant in the room, or maybe I should say the admin kind of hovering above it all. White, I mean, he's the one who created this whole experiment, this digital petri dish of chaos and creativity.
It's almost like he's the Wizard of Oz, right? Pulling all the levers behind the scenes, shaping the server's destiny, but rarely ever revealing his true face or what he was actually thinking. We hear about him all the time in the other players, but Win himself is pretty much silent.
Which makes trying to figure out his vision for Ban.land even more interesting.
Where?
I mean, was he really this hands-off admin, content to just let the players create their own world no matter how crazy it got? Or was he secretly orchestrating some of the drama, nudging things in a certain direction?
Well, the sources we have definitely offer some clues, but in the end, I think we end up with more questions than answers. Some players, like Top Surgery, describe Wit as chill, and they appreciated how open he was about logging the in-game chat on Discord. It suggests that he wanted to stay connected to the community, even if it was from a distance.
That's a good point. It's like he wanted to watch the experiment unfold, but didn't necessarily want to interfere with it. He gave the players the tools and the freedom, and then just stepped back to see what they would do with it.
Exactly. But then you have players like Space Def who imply that there was this darker side to Wed. They accuse him of admin abuse towards the end of the server's lifespan, and this just brings up a whole bunch of new questions.
Yeah, admin abuse is definitely a loaded term. What do you think that actually involved? Was he using his powers to unfairly punish players? To interfere with gameplay? Or was it something else entirely? It's kind of left up to our imaginations.
Unfortunately, we don't have any specific details, but it's just another example of how Wyatt is this enigmatic figure, this puzzle box with all these complicated mechanisms, but no key to open it. We have to try and piece together his personality and his motivations from these little scraps of information we have and the interpretations of the other players.
It's like we're those digital archaeologists again, sifting through the ruins, trying to understand the mind of the creator.
Yeah.
And what we find is someone really complex, someone full of contradictions. On one hand, he implemented all these unique features, the giant mobs, custom plugins, those weird events. That all added to Ban.land's unpredictable charm.
He clearly had a sense of humor, and he was willing to push the boundaries of what a Minecraft server could be. It's like he was saying, here's a sandbox, go nuts.
But then there's that whole dupe era. Wid was famously hands-off during that time, letting those exploits run wild. Yeah. Almost like he was running some kind of social experiment.
Right. Was he really indifferent to the impact it was having on the server? Or did he secretly love the chaos that it caused? Was he testing the players, seeing how they would react to having all this power and resources suddenly at their fingertips? We just don't know.
And it's hard to ignore the consequences of that era. It totally destabilized the server's economy. It eroded trust between players. And some people even argue that it contributed to the server's eventual shutdown.
It's easy to want to blame someone, to say that Wid's hands-off approach is what ultimately killed Ban.land. But I think it's more complicated than that. Ban.land was this really complex ecosystem shaped by so many different factors. Player interactions, emergent gameplay, external events. Wid's administrative style was just one small part of that whole tapestry.
He provided the canvas, but it was the players who actually painted the picture. Their actions, their creativity, their conflicts. That's what truly made Ban.land what it was.
And that's the real legacy of this server. It was a testament to the power of emergent gameplay. The unpredictable beauty of a community shaping its own destiny in a world without rules.
A world that ultimately vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving behind all these unanswered questions, whispered legends, and a deep impact on the people who were lucky enough to experience it firsthand.
And even though the server itself is gone, the stories continue to captivate us. They make us question our assumptions about online communities, about the nature of anarchy, and about the role of the people who have the power to shape these digital worlds.
We might never fully understand White's motivations or the true extent of his impact on Ban.land, but that's all right. The mystery is part of what makes it so fascinating. It keeps us coming back, digging deeper, trying to piece together the puzzle.
And who knows, maybe someday those server files will resurface and we'll get some new insights into Wid's reign and the rise and fall of this amazing digital kingdom. Until then, we're left to ponder the mysteries, debate the different interpretations, and just appreciate the incredible legacy of Ban.land.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up another deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground today, from Russ's complicated motivations to Wide's elusive vision. I hope you guys enjoyed the ride.
As always, we encourage you to keep exploring, keep questioning, keep diving deep into this amazing world of online gaming. There are so many incredible stories out there just waiting to be discovered.
That's all from us. Until next time, keep those torches lit and never stop exploring the digital unknown.